That's my blood. That's my blood. It's a lot of my blood. Oh, God.
Oh, that beginning scene. One of the most iconic moments in the gaming industry. You probably at least know about it, as it is still an extremely memorable moment in not just the Uncharted series, but in general media. And this classic segment belongs to Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, released on October 13th, 2009. The first game was of course a commercial success, selling over 2.6 million copies. Naughty Dog, the developing studio of the game, knew they had a hit on their hands and immediately got work to crafting one of the most iconic sequels of all time. And today, we will be diving deeper into why Uncharted 2 is loved by me and many others, what makes it such an iconic game in the PlayStation lineup, and also analyzing its potential downsides. Now, a few things to note that if you haven't watched my review on the first game, I'd advise doing that first, as I will be revisiting a lot of my thoughts and opinions on that game, so further context on how I feel will be found there. I would also like to note that I am reviewing this game through the Nathan Drake collection on my PS5, which are just upscaled ports of the original 3 games with a smooth 60 frames per second. So with that out the way, let us hop on the Uncharted train and get straight into this with Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. Our story takes place 2 years after the events of the original game. Our returning protagonist, Nathan Drake, is approached by new characters Harry Flynn and Chloe Fraser with a job proposal to help them perform a break-in at the Istanbul Museum to steal his Mongolian oil lamp, which has major connections to the merchant traveler Marco Polo and his doomed voyage from China back in 1292. Nathan accepts a job, and after sneaking through the museum with Flynn, he finds the oil lamp that he had been looking for. However, after finding out the secrets that lie within the lamp, Flynn betrays Drake, leaving him to get arrested and put into jail. Yeah, I guess for some reason Nathan Drake hasn't learned his lesson from doing stuff like this after the first game, and trust me, he never will. Anyway, a few months later, returning character in Chad Victor Sullivan bails him out with Chloe Fraser and explains to Nate that Flynn has been working with a Serbian war criminal named Zoran Lazarevic, who has been seeking the Chintamani stone, which is later revealed that this is due to him lusting for the stone's true power. And with this, it is up to Nate and his peers to get to the stone first in order to destroy it and to stop Flynn and Lazarevic from gaining its power. And that basically sums up the rest of the game's plot. Again, similar to the plot of not only the last game, but the Indiana Jones movies, which the Uncharted series is most compared to, but it doesn't make the overall story uninteresting or unoriginal. And this is mainly due to what I would consider my favorite part of an Uncharted game, which is the characters and their actions. Our protagonist, Nathan Drake, is as great as ever in this one. I mean, once you see Nathan Drake on screen, you know you're in for a thrilling experience, whether that be his fun-loving demeanor and sense of adventure, or the crazy situations he is constantly getting himself into. No matter what it is, you just can't hate the guy. Oh, and let's not forget that Nathan Drake never dies. Now enter Chloe Fraser, a new main character who is essentially Nathan Drake's love interest in this game, who both do things that are very not family friendly, and which I am not allowed to elaborate on or show, or else YouTube will smite me. But other than that, she is still a great character and is one of my favorites in the series. She has a snarky personality and is overall responsible for having the coolest moments in the game, and the way that she and Nate bounce off each other, in a non-suggestive way, is just fun to watch.
No, I think maybe we should cut over to the hotel a different way. Just avoid this crew altogether. I'm sorry, do you have a plan to go along with that grenade?
Yes, I do. I'm gonna circle around this way, break up their little party.
Aren't you forgetting about somebody?
Well, that's where you come in, sweetheart. I need you to take care of him. But, do it quietly.
Do it quietly.
Yeah.
Are you sure about this?
Desperate times, right?
What does that mean?
As for our returning characters, we have Sully, who is still my favorite character in the franchise. Unfortunately, he doesn't show up in this one that often. He's there during the first 1/3 of the game, but after that, he's just kinda gone. It is a bit of a shame. We We also have Elena, who we see later in the story, and after that basically tags along for the rest of the adventure. Now, something I've never understood is what exactly happened between her and Nate after the first game. It felt like they ended up dating after the game ended, but in Uncharted 2, she is weirdly absent until her introduction in the story later. Now, it is implied that something did actually happen, causing them to drift apart from each other, but to my knowledge, there isn't much context for this, which has always felt odd to me. Not really an issue, just something I thought I should mention. With that aside, though, Elena is as great as ever in this game. Now, we do actually have a few side characters that only appear for a few chapters, like Jeff and Tenzin, who are decent characters all around. Rest in peace, Jeff, though. He didn't deserve what happened to him. Oh, and let's of course not forget our villains of the story, Flynn and Lazarevich. Now, the first game didn't have that great of a villain, as I didn't really find them that threatening, and only did like a few things to hinder our heroes in their travels. So I'm happy to say that Flynn and Lazarevich are much better villains, to be sure, and actually pose a threat throughout the story. Flynn is the one that actually portrays Nate in the beginning of the story. He is cocky and is an overall douchebag, making him pretty unlikable in a good way. He serves as a decent antagonist, but at the very most, he just consistently taunts Nate and the rest of the characters. That is because a lot of the action the villains pull comes from Lazarevich, who actually serves as a pretty threatening villain throughout the game, showing no remorse for his actions and just wanting complete control over the Chintamani Stone. He's pretty much one of those villains that is a completely heartless person who looks up to the bad historical figures of the past. He is constantly getting in the way of Nate's plans throughout the game, and you overall actually feel how much of a threat he poses in this one. I feel like if your villain is a threatening one, and is generally unlikable as a person, then you have yourself a pretty good villain. And Flynn and Lazarevich feel exactly like this. Definitely my favorite villains in the series. But with all of our characters and villains in place, you're in for what is probably my favorite story in the franchise. Be prepared for tons of great character moments, tons of intense action scenes, and great twists to boot. These characters, their actions, and the places they travel to is what really drives forward an otherwise simple premise, Exhibit A being the entire train segment. I think what made the train segment stick out to me and many others is how it is the first segment of the game, making you instantly intrigued and wondering how our boy Nate got in this situation. After the intro segment, you pretty much go back to how it all started and spend the first half of the game getting back up to that moment. It really makes you invested in the story as you really want to know how Nathan ended up clinging for dear life on a decimated train that is falling apart. I absolutely love the dialogue, interactions, and relationship between our characters, making the story an overall very entertaining experience that will have you on the edge of your seat. It never gets old, and I love going back to this game for the cutscenes alone. Now, enough about the story, let's get into the gameplay. You know, the real meat of a video game. Uncharted 2 pretty much plays identical to the first game, with two main parts of it being the gun combat and the platforming. The gun combat consists of you just shooting down Lazarevich's army of mooks in all sorts of areas, using the cover and guns at your disposal to survive. A lot of my thoughts on the gun combat pretty much are identical to the first game, except for the fact that they are all just all around better with greater polish. However, there are a few new additions to the gun combat in the form of brand new enemies and weapons. These weapons include the FAL, the grenade launcher, the riot shields, a minigun, and a few others. These mainly serve to just be alternatives to the already existing weapons. Like the FAL is not only more accurate than the M4 and the AK, but it is also a burst weapon. Grenade launchers are just RPGs with more ammo and are shot in an arc, and a minigun is just a very heavy weapon that leaves you vulnerable but shreds enemies easily. Overall, the new weapons are neat additions, however I do wish there was more added here. We also have new enemy types that all have one goal, which is to kill you and you only. Technically, every enemy is new in this game since it is a different army, but the ones here pretty much act the same as they did in the first game. But we do have some legitimate new enemies like the chain gunners, which don't really serve much of a threat as most of them just seem to die during scripted moments in the game. You also have the Yeti and Blue guys, which pretty much serve as the monster of the day. The Yeti guys just serve for more scripted segments as they don't actually die to my knowledge, but these blue ones are legitimate enemies that are weak to the crossbow weapon that they drop. You only really first encounter these foes near the end of the game though. And in terms of the actual new gameplay changes, this is pretty much all the game has to offer. The only major difference is really the locales you're fighting at, but I will go into greater detail about this later. I do vastly prefer the gun combat sections in this game though, as the game really does keep things interesting with them, which I will again talk about later. In conjunction with the gun combat is also the platforming that takes place in between the combat sections. It consists of Nate climbing on all sorts of walls, swinging across pits, and in my case constantly falling to his death because I am way too clumsy when it comes to performing a basic action in this game. Now, is there anything particularly new to the platforming? Nah. It's really just the same old stuff from the last game, with the major difference being, again, the places you do them in. My opinion on the platforming is pretty much the same as it was in the last game. You've probably noticed by now that I haven't really had much to say about the gun combat and platforming because there really isn't much new in this game. However, there is actually one major difference as to what sets this game apart from the previous one, and that is the set pieces these gameplay moments take place in. And shocker, I absolutely love the set pieces in this game. This is what I'm talking about. In Uncharted 1, a majority of the game takes place in same areas, which are these green looking jungles and forests. There was only an occasional set piece difference, whether that be the bunker area or the fortress. But either way, it mostly still took place in one setting. But in this game, the set pieces have been significantly ramped up. You have areas like the Istanbul Museum, a swamp area, a war zone in Nepal, a moving train, a Titipan village, a snow cave with an ancient temple residing in the center, an abandoned monastery, and finally, the mythical city of Shambhala. All of these set pieces really make this game stand out from the last one, and they never overstay their welcome either. Each area makes a difference in how a combat or platforming section will play out, whether it be fighting your way through the moving train, or scurrying up that same train as it dangles below a cliff. Not only is the design of these arenas and the locales really good, but it's just nice to see ourselves in all of these great set pieces. Not to mention that the action has been significantly ramped up in this game, as you will find yourself running across rooftops avoiding a helicopter out for your blood, running across a breaking down bridge, or jumping across multiple convoy trucks as you make your way toward the mountains. All of these moments are incredibly fun. You're genuinely in for a great time here, especially during the train segment. And look, I know I've mentioned it throughout this whole review, but can you really blame me? It's such an incredible moment in both gameplay and story. You travel across this train blazing through enemies, climbing across treacherous sections, avoiding signs as they come by. Hell, you even take control of a tank to destroy this helicopter. It is not only extremely exhilarating, but just a cool moment all around. And of course, let's not forget the train wreck that takes place after. Absolutely incredible stuff in here. And I can really say the same for the rest of these set pieces. Basically, what I am trying to say here is that they took the foundation of the first game and cranks it up to 11. And is a core reason why this game is not only awesome, but pretty iconic as well. Now, let's briefly mention the bosses in this game. Well, actually, it isn't plural, as there is only one main boss in this one like last time, which is Lazarevich, who serves as the final boss. And honestly, I don't really like this fight that much. I mean, it's fine, but all it amounts to is running across the arena as he chases you and shooting the blue explosive resin next to him, and that's literally it. Not really the best way to end the game, and is definitely the thing that has aged the worst in this one. Overall, I think the gameplay is still great in this game, with tons of action and platforming. Combined with the set pieces and locales you travel through, you are in for some awesome moments all around. But of course, in a game like Uncharted, these set pieces and action moments wouldn't be amplified without music accompanying it. That is where the soundtrack comes in. Composed by Greg Edmondson, who also composed the first game's soundtrack, which is something I forgot to mention in that video, and he did a fantastic job. The soundtrack has great stuff and has also been amplified tremendously in this game. Again, not really stuff I would listen to on my own, but still commendable nonetheless. Without the music, these great moments you experience throughout the game just wouldn't hit the same. Which is the great thing about the music throughout the series, is it really goes for a more cinematic approach and fits with what is happening in the game quite nicely. And with that being said, here are some of my favorite tracks. Have a listen. Uncharted 2 Among Thieves has to be one of my favorite games of all time. It is not only such a thrilling and fun game to play through, but it is also such an iconic one as well, with its intense action and combat and set pieces to the amazing story with lovable characters and intriguing villains. Uncharted 2 really set a high bar for the rest of the series. I think the main issue that this game poses is its lack of innovation on the gameplay side of things. As I said, I absolutely love the gameplay in this game, and the set pieces are truly the thing that made the game so different from the first one, but that can only get you so far before it starts feeling like the same old again, and I really think that some new gameplay additions would have helped in that regard. But despite this, I still think this game is a decent sequel nonetheless. It is just mainly shown in other aspects of the game rather than the actual gameplay mechanics. Other than that, Uncharted 2 is not only a phenomenal game, but a phenomenal piece of fiction as a whole, hosting a lot of iconic moments that I still go back to this day. It is definitely my favorite game in the series, and I highly, highly advise you guys to check it out if you haven't yet. A solid 10 out of 10. I love this game to death, and I would really suggest playing it if you haven't already. Go check it out.
So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how scared were you that I was gonna die?
4?
4?
Yeah, why?
A 4.
Yeah.
You were at least an 8.
An 8?
You were a total 8.
An 8? Those Guardian things were an 8.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, those were terrifying.
What's a 10?
Clowns?
Clowns over my death?
I hate
Clowns?
clowns. I hate clowns.
Oh my word. You thought I was dead.
No.
No, you thought I was gone.
No,
Yes,
no.
you did.
No, I
saw
had you all
shed
along.
tears. You shed a bunch of them.
Tears? It was raining.
No, it was not.
You were unconscious and it was
It
raining.
was totally sunny out and you were bawling.
It wasn't sunny. You were unconscious.
Whatever. I kept your tears in a jar. I have proof.
I'll give you 5. How's that?
Thank you guys for watching, as always. First off, I want to thank you all for the tremendous support in my Doom review series. I'm glad you all enjoyed it as much as I did making it. Secondly, this will hopefully be my last video with a crappy mic, as I am getting a new one very soon. It hasn't come in yet at the time of this video, but hopefully by the next one you'll be hearing me a lot clearer. And thirdly, go and follow my Twitter if you haven't, but be warned as I post a lot of idiotic stuff, and I certainly think it's not for the faint of heart. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Peace. Despite this, Uncharted 2 is not only a phenomenal game, but a phenomenal piece of chicken. My